here's Brody Brazil.
I'd really like to think that the most important part of this video is that it stands the test of time. We're about to discuss the secrets of every NHL Stanley Cup playoff series. Really, this could apply to the last 10 years. This could apply to Stanley Cup playoff series 10 years from now. So if you're watching this in 2035, by the way, it's 2025 as I'm recording this, ironically, during the Stanley Cup final. But if you're watching this, it shouldn't change so long as the format of the Stanley Cup playoffs doesn't change. That's a best-of-7 series like all rounds are, rounds 1 through 4. And the series format goes 2-2, 1-1-1, as in where the games are played. The higher seed starts, the lower seed gets 3 games, the higher seed gets the 4 games with the 2-2, 1-1-1 format. But I'm sharing this because I've covered and seen a lot of Stanley Cup playoff series firsthand. By the way, here in 2025, it's been a while. It's been about 5 or 6 years since I've had that opportunity, but I think I did the math on this. At least a dozen plus seasons and maybe 20 or 30 playoff series and more than 100 playoff games. So I feel like I've got the background and the understanding of how every single series works and the commonalities, the themes and secrets of every single series as they apply to pretty much any team, any seed, whoever's the favorite here, what the odds are in a given series, no matter who's got the momentum. These are playoff series themes that are applicable to, like I said, any matchup, no matter if it was past, present, or in the future. I've formulated all of this after, covering dozens of playoff rounds, rounds 1, 2, 3, and ultimately in 2016 when the Sharks went to the Stanley Cup final. I was embedded in that, got to see round 4 up close and personal, and you know what? Round 4 is a bit different. The sights, the sounds, the glamour, the attention of the Stanley Cup final, there's nothing like it. And I hope to get back to that sooner than later someday. I'm also doing this because I've seen enough to feel confident that what I'm about to share here applies to every single round. This could be a first round or a conference final, a third round. It doesn't really matter because this is the back and forth of a best-of-7 series. And again, I'm only talking about the 2-2, 1-1-1 format only. So let's get into the breakdown here. Every game 1 has this theme and this secret. Well, there are no more secrets. All the talk, all the hype, all the buildup, all the preamble, it's all now a lot less important. Once you actually get into the games, it's nice to kind of shake off the preview, the series buildup, the series back and forth, the quotes, the bulletin board material, the historical side of it. It's kind of nice to just get past that and actually get into playing the games, watching how things go, seeing some trends, and getting some results. You're also in game 1, you get some initial questions revealed, like is that player going to participate? A lot of injury status questions are realized after warm-ups happen for game 1, and is that player going to be here or not? At least starting off this series, you now have your answers that maybe sometimes you've waited days or weeks or maybe even months to find this out. So some initial questions, injury stuff, lineup stuff, roster stuff, a lot of that gets revealed. Strategy stuff revealed pretty early on with game 1. Storylines do get introduced. Obviously, it's a small sample size, 60 minutes or more of regulation or overtime hockey. And now you're starting to see, okay, this is how these two teams right here, right now will match up. And again, no more secrets. That's the big trend here. Trends are realized in this game, right? Maybe one team's special teams was way better, or this team had great goaltending, or somebody's trying to neutral zone trap you all game long. So you start to realize trends that are going to happen in this series. However, two good teams didn't get there by chance. They're bound to make adjustments. Sometimes it's just a bad game 1 for one team or both teams, a bad game for one player, one star player. None of these early trends that you've realized, none of them are worth obsessing over. It's just one game, and that's my last point here. No series. It's so important to remember. Whoever wins game 1, that's just a thing. And I know sometimes there is the stat, winners of game 1 go on to win the series more often than they lose it, but no series has ever been won or lost with game 1 alone. You have to remind yourself that on both sides. If you're the losing side, it's not anywhere near over. And if you're the winning side, you can feel okay about it, but I wouldn't exactly start cashing in your thoughts. Game 2, it's time to get greedy on both sides. That's the trend. That's the secret of game 2s. You get a first chance at a series turning point because, look, it's the early on lead and advantage maybe that one team will have, but 2-0 and 1-1, they largely feel different. Like 2-0, that O seems glaring. 1-1, it's like, all right, each team has thrown a punch. And now it's a best-of-5 series after just being 1-1, right? We're going to the lower seed city. It's a best-of-5, and now that lower team actually has home ice advantage. More on that in just a second. The road team strategy in starting off as the lower seed and playing those first 2 games against a hungry opponent, a good opponent, the road team strategy always has to be this. You're happy with the split. If you go back to your own rink, tied at 1, that's great. But once you've won game 1 as the road team, man, you got to get greedy. Because imagine going up 2-0 in the series and then taking it back to your city and your fans and your home ice advantage. The higher seed actually gets this first real break of the series, 2 home games in a row. They'll never get that again. After that, it's the 1-1-1. And don't get me wrong, Game 7 on home ice is a huge advantage, but having the first 2 on your ice is about as important as it gets. So that's why you want to feel greedy. If you can win the home game, your first one at home to start off this series, you definitely want to try and take both of those. You want to win them all, but especially knowing the circumstances. Let's talk about Game 3s. The secret here is the scenery change. The lower seed finally gets their first home game, their home crowd. They get the advantage on faceoffs. They get last change to dictate the matchups, sleep in your own beds, eat your own food, all of that. I mentioned before, if the series is tied 1-1 entering Game 3, now it's a best-of-5. And if you're that lower seed team, think about this. If you've done that split on the road, you're now coming home to home ice the rest of this series. It's now a best-of-5 series if you're tied at 1. And you're going to get 3 games, 2 in a row here, to the other team's just 2 remaining games, right? And those are singular games split. They're not back-to-back for the other team on home ice, if all that makes sense. Perhaps travel is a factor when you finally get to Game 3. And not so much when it's Eastern and Western Conference playoffs and they're separate until the final, but how about the Stanley Cup final? I mentioned before when I covered the Sharks and Penguins in 2016, I want to say that this was a thing that the Penguins hadn't been out to California since like January of that year. And now we're in June, so 5 or 6 months without coming all the way out west. And now all of a sudden they have to do that. And the rest of their regular season was out mostly east of the Mississippi, and most of their playoff games were east of the Mississippi. So, like I said, perhaps in some cases, Game 3 and that scenery change, maybe it's a travel factor. Changing time zones for the first time in a very long time, that might throw a team off. 2-1 is a turning point. The result of Game 3, if it turns out to be 3-0, like 2-1, somebody's going to feel better than the other side. But 3-0, if you can take the first 3 games, it's starting to feel inevitable that it's going to go your way. At that point, the other team needs to win 4 in a row, right? That's going to be, they need to sweep you out from here on out, and it has happened. I've seen it, but 3-0 feels pretty inevitable. Game 4, in my opinion, is always the biggest turning point of any best-of-7 Stanley Cup playoff series. And here's the reason why. There's only 3 possible results, and they are each so drastically different from each other. You could have a 4-0 series sweep. There's no contest. The series was over. One team never even won a single game. 4-0 is pretty decided. 3-1 also feels pretty inevitable. I said 3-0 is big. 3-1, you're still in the driver's seat if you're the team with 3 wins. If it's tied at 2, that is anybody's series. It's now, again, a brand new series. It's a best of 3. Granted, the higher seeded team does have home ice advantage with games 5 and 7 on their home ice, but it's still a brand new series, a very short series if the first 4 games are split. That's why Game 4s are very pivotal. The result of Game 4 is very deciding. Let's get to the theme and the secret of Game 5s. Things happen very quick from here on out because the travel and the chaos begin. And if you're somebody like me who was covering these series and you're embedded with a team, you're going back and forth, right? Especially if it was San Jose and Detroit back in the day. If you didn't know the series was going to go back to Detroit until 10 p.m. Pacific, like the next day, that's a pretty late flight to book. So like I said, the chaos begins with the 1-1-1 portion of the series format. Game 5, the result of it, if the series isn't decided 4-1, then it's going to be 3-2. And somebody at 3-2 is guaranteed now to be facing elimination, and maybe for the first time, all of the playoffs, right? A lot of times a team can find itself down 3-2, And this is the first time that they are facing elimination. So that is now possible. Elimination can exist, obviously, in a Game 4 situation, but it can definitely exist in a Game 5 situation. It's even more likely. The momentum of the series, the mental edge of this series, the fatigue factor, how you handle it, it all becomes a lot more important. And I will say that in a Game 5 situation, things start to happen pretty darn quick after 5 games are complete. In Game 6, I'll say it like this. The biggest secret, the biggest theme is the chance to close it for whoever is up 3-2. There's only one way this goes and arrives at a Game 6. I mean, if it gets to 6, you're in a 3-2 series one way or the other. Somebody has 3 games as a win, or in terms of wins, and the other team is facing elimination. It is a huge letdown if you're up 3-2 and you're not able to close things out in Game 6. Home ice or on the road matters more if you're the home team, but if you can't close it out in your first opportunity up 3-2 in a tight series, and then it would be 3-3, then you're going to face a Game 7. It's kind of more like the thought of even going to 7. If you have a chance to end it in 6 and you don't, then it gets particularly interesting and hairy. It's a huge boost, by the way. If you're the team down 3-2 in the series and you find a way to win and hold off elimination and take it to a Game 7, that is a huge boost for a group. And you know what? If you're the lower seeded team and you're playing that Game 6, and if you win it and send it to 7, it's kind of interesting because as long as it's not round 4, you're left wondering at the end of that game, did we just play our last game of the season here or not? Are we done? You don't know yet because the series will ultimately be decided into Game 7. But there's just a lot going on with Game 6s. The biggest theme is if you have a chance to end it in 6, you should do that because Game 7, as we know, no secret or surprise here, although this is kind of the secret, it's all on the line. And the dual elimination day, it really puts a lot of pressure on the mentals, on the stress factor, on the fatigue physically and mentally of this series. The first time facing elimination, at least for one team, because one team had to win down 3-2 in the series to force a Game 7, right? So one team has recently faced elimination. We know that. We're not guaranteed that both teams have faced elimination. I'd like to think that the team who forced a Game 7 feels a lot better about having a Game 7 rather than the team who was up in the series, now tied in the series 3-3, entering Game 7. There's the weight of months and a whole season on the line and a roster that was built this way, and this is your one chance maybe to go to the Cup final or win the Cup final. There's a lot on the line when you really get to this point late in the season. These games, these Game 7s, they're usually tight. They're usually conservative in terms of gameplay. You don't want to do a lot of risky things to take too many chances. Obviously, when you need to score, you need to score, but you're trying to be safe and smart all at the same time with some strategy to actually go out and win the game. And it's an interesting thing. If you get to a Game 7, right? If you could have won it in 6 and you play that Game 7 and you suffer a couple more injuries, what does going to a Game 7 cost a team in terms of if they're trying to advance to the next round? Yeah, you got to win to advance, but if you could have won it in 6 or 5 and you end up winning it in 7, what do those 1 or 2 extra games cost your team physically in the next round? The toll that even one single Game 7 takes is pretty amazing. Or there's also the thought that if the team you're facing in the next round, they just swept their series, now they have to sit idle for maybe as much as a week while you finish off your series. So maybe playing a Game 7 keeps you sharp and fresh, and yeah, you're a little bit more beat up, but you cut out the time between series, and it's the old rest versus rust. And maybe rust would have happened and rest you would have liked, but you're a little bit more ready for the next round. Okay, that's games 1 through 7. So what is this? I'm throwing in a little bonus here. I want to talk about the secret of recovery time. And this goes if you're a player, a coach, front office person, or broadcaster or fan. Somebody like maybe I fall into both those categories here. Recovery time goes like this. You have to realize that in the Stanley Cup playoffs, there's only one team that gets to end this with a win and close it out and win it all, right? So most of the other teams, like 15 of 16 teams, as we do this here in 2025, 15 teams are pretty upset in how it ends, where it ends, and why it ends. There's only one team that doesn't end upset. But if you're one of those 15 teams every year, you get to be upset for 1 week of every round your team existed. So if you're eliminated in round 1, I'll give you a week to get over it. If you got to round 2, all right, I'll give you half a month to get your feelings out and move on to next season. Conference final, 3 weeks. Take 3 weeks because you got that far. You were that close to the Stanley Cup final and you didn't win. If you get to the Stanley Cup final, and I've seen this firsthand, and you don't win, you get to give yourself a month to get over it. And getting over it is not easy. Like I said, a lot of times you realize after the fact, it's so hard to get there in the first place. You kind of forget all the little breaks and things that happen to your team, for your team, to get you to these far situations. It's also really hard to get back on a year-to-year basis. But again, 1 week for every round that your team existed, that's how long you get to recover from the end of the Stanley Cup playoffs. So those are the secrets to every playoff series. Like I said, the best thing I could hope for with this video is that if you're watching this 2, 3, 5, 7, 10 years down the road, so long as the format doesn't dramatically change, I think everything I said here is going to stand up to the test of time. Thumbs up down below. I greatly appreciate that. Also, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Even if it is like 2035, I'm still going to appreciate it down the road. I will still want to see you back here next time.